I should have known better than to trust my best friend's judgment when she was 3 martinis deep. "One drink," Mara had said, her eyes glittering with mischief as we stood outside Obsidian. The kind of club where velvet ropes and silent bouncers separated ordinary people from whatever existed beyond those dark glass doors. "Just 1 drink, Alara. You've been buried in spreadsheets for 6 months. Live a little." Living a little had never been my specialty. I was a financial analyst who color-coded her calendar and meal prepped on Sundays. My idea of risk was trying a new coffee shop, but something about the way the city lights reflected off the rain-slicked streets that night made me feel reckless. Or maybe it was the way my ex's engagement announcement had glowed on my phone screen earlier, each pixel a tiny knife to my pride. So I'd said yes. Now, standing in the center of the club's main floor with bass vibrating through my chest and bodies moving like shadows around me, I was regretting everything. The space was all dark marble and gold accents, with crystal chandeliers that cast fractured light across faces I couldn't quite see. It smelled like expensive cologne, imported liquor, and something darker power maybe, or danger, the kind of place where money whispered instead of shouted. "There he is," Mara hissed in my ear, nodding toward a man in the VIP section above us. Her ex-boyfriend, laughing with his arm around someone new. "I need you to help me make him jealous. Please, Alara. Just 1 dance. Make it look good." I followed her gaze and felt my stomach drop. The VIP section was elevated, separated from us by both stairs and status. Men in expensive suits sat in curved booths, their faces half-shadowed, their presence somehow heavier than everyone else's. "Mara, I don't think—" "Please." Her fingers dug into my wrist. "I just need him to see me having fun. That's all." Before I could argue, she was pulling me toward the center of the dance floor, where the lights shifted from blue to red like a heartbeat. The music swelled, something with a deep, primal rhythm that made rational thought feel impossible. I closed my eyes and moved, letting the beat guide me because thinking about what I was doing would have stopped me cold. Mara spun me, laughing, and for a moment I forgot about spreadsheets and meal prep and playing it safe. For a moment I was just a girl in a black dress, feeling the music. Then I felt that prickling awareness that comes when someone is watching you. Not just watching, studying. I opened my eyes and looked up at the VIP section, scanning the faces until I found him. He sat alone at the center booth, a tumbler of amber liquid in one hand, his other arm stretched along the back of the seat. Dark hair, darker eyes, and a face that looked like it had been carved from marble by someone who understood both beauty and brutality. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than my car, and he held himself with the kind of stillness that made everyone around him seem frantic by comparison. He was looking directly at me. My breath caught. The music faded to background noise. Everything faded except the weight of his gaze, heavy and assessing and somehow claiming, like he'd already decided something about me and I just hadn't been informed yet. I should have looked away. Every instinct screamed at me to break eye contact, to disappear into the crowd, to remember that I was a girl who played it safe. But I didn't. Instead, I held his gaze and kept dancing, my heart hammering against my ribs. His expression didn't change. He didn't smile or nod or give any indication that he was affected, but something shifted in the air between us. Something that felt like a challenge. Or a promise. "Who is that?" I breathed. But Mara was already gone, lost in the crowd. The song changed to something slower, more dangerous. I started to turn away, to find Mara and suggest we leave, when I felt a presence. Behind me, not close enough to touch, but close enough that I could feel the heat of another body, smell cedar and smoke and something uniquely masculine. "You're drawing attention," a voice said. Low, controlled, with an accent I couldn't quite place. The kind of voice that didn't ask questions because it didn't need to. I turned slowly. He was taller than I'd realized, broad-shouldered in a way that made me feel small despite my heels. Up close, he was even more devastating, sharp jawline, a mouth that looked like it rarely smiled, and those eyes, dark gray, like storm clouds, and completely unreadable. "I wasn't trying to," I said, surprised my voice worked at all. "I know." He studied me the way someone might study a painting they were considering purchasing. That's what makes it interesting. I gestured vaguely toward the crowd. "My friend is currently accomplishing her goal of making her ex-boyfriend jealous." He tilted his head slightly. "She used you as bait. You know that, don't you?" The casual cruelty of the observation stung because it was true. I'd felt it even as I'd agreed. that hollow feeling of being a prop in someone else's drama. "It doesn't matter," I said. "No," he agreed. "It doesn't." The music shifted again, something even slower. Around us, couples were pairing off, bodies finding rhythm together. He extended one hand. "Dance with me." It wasn't a question, but it wasn't quite a command either. Something in between that made my pulse spike. "I don't even know your name," I said. "Dante." The name fell from his lips like a secret. "And you're Alara. Your friend said it 3 times in the last 10 minutes. My mouth went dry. He'd been listening, watching not just me, but everything around me. I should have walked away, should have laughed it off, found Mara, called an Uber, and gone back to my safe, predictable life. Instead, I put my hand in his. His fingers closed around mine, warm and certain, and he pulled me. Close, not quite improper, but closer than strangers should be. His other hand settled at the small of my back, and even through the fabric of my dress, I could feel the heat of his palm. We moved together, and it felt like falling. Like standing at the edge of something vast and dark and being unable to step back. "Why me?" I whispered. He leaned down, his breath warm against my ear. "Because you looked at me like you weren't afraid." "I am afraid," I admitted. "I know." His hand tightened slightly at my back. "You should be." Before I could process that, before I could decide if it was a warning or a threat, he spun me outward, then back into his chest. The movement was smooth, practiced, and left me breathless. The music was building to something, the beat matching my racing heart. Dante's eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw something flicker in them. Not warmth, exactly, but interest. Hunger, maybe. Then, in one fluid motion, he dipped me backward, supporting my weight. Entirely. My hair falling loose toward the floor. Time crystallized. The music faded. The crowd disappeared. There was only his face above mine, those storm cloud eyes, and the terrible certainty that my life had just changed in a way I couldn't understand yet. He leaned down, his mouth hovering inches from mine. "Tell me to stop," he said, his voice rough velvet. "I should have. God, I should have. But I didn't." Dante kissed me like he owned me, like he'd been waiting for this moment, and now that it had arrived, he wasn't going to waste it. Deep and claiming and absolutely devastating. When he pulled me back upright, the world spinning back into focus, I saw 3 things. Mara staring at us with her mouth open. Men in suits moving toward us from the VIP section, their expressions dark. And Dante's face, transformed from remote interest into something possessive and dangerous. "We need to go," he said. "Now." "What? Why?" He didn't answer. He just grabbed my wrist and pulled me toward the exit. Behind us, I heard shouting, the sharp crack of something breaking, and I realized with ice-cold clarity that I'd just kissed someone I shouldn't have. Someone who was about to drag me into a world I didn't understand. Dante's hand was an iron shackle around my wrist as he pulled me through the club. Bodies parted for him like water. People took one look at his face, at whatever they saw there, and stepped back, their conversations dying mid-sentence. Even the music seemed to lower, as if the entire building recognized his authority. "Wait," I stumbled in my heels, trying to keep up with his long strides. "What's happening? Where are we going?" He didn't answer, didn't even look back. Behind us, I heard more shouting. The heavy thud of boots on marble. My heart was a drum against my ribs, panic rising like bile in my throat. We burst through a side exit I hadn't even known existed, into an alley where rain was falling in sheets. The cold hit me immediately, soaking, through my dress in seconds. A black car was waiting, engine running, windows tinted so dark I couldn't see inside. The driver's door opened, and a man stepped out, tall, scarred, with eyes that swept the alley with military precision. "Sir," he said, his voice clipped. "They're mobilizing." "I know." Dante opened the back door and practically pushed me inside. "Drive." I landed on leather seats that smelled like expensive cigars and rain. Before I could protest, Dante slid in beside me and the car was moving, tires squealing as we shot out of the alley and onto the main street. "What the hell is going on?" I demanded, finally finding my voice. Water dripped from my hair onto the pristine leather. Who were those men? Why are we running? Dante's jaw was tight, his eyes fixed on the rear window. In the passing streetlights, his face looked carved from stone, beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. You shouldn't have been there, he said finally. You asked me to dance. I made a mistake. His voice was flat, controlled, but underneath I heard something else. Anger, maybe, or regret. The car took a sharp turn, throwing me against him. His arm came up automatically to steady me, and for a moment I was pressed against his chest, feeling the steady thud of his heart so much calmer than mine. I pulled away, pressing myself against the opposite door. Let me out. Right now. No. This is kidnapping. This is protection. He finally looked at me, and the intensity in his eyes made my breath catch. Those men in the club, they would have used you to get to me, and they wouldn't have been gentle about it. Used me how? I don't understand any of this. I don't even know who you are. Something flickered across his face, an emotion too quick to name. You really don't, do you? Should I? He studied me for a long moment, rain hammering against the windows, the city lights streaking past like falling stars. Then he leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping. Lower. My name is Dante Caruso, he said, and I run this city's underworld. The words hung between us, heavy as lead. I laughed. I couldn't help it, the sound burst out of me, sharp and slightly hysterical. That's not real. The Mafia isn't people like you don't know we exist, he interrupted. We prefer it that way. But tonight, you stepped into my world, and now the Volkov family knows I'm interested in you. The who? Russian Bratva, our oldest rivals. His expression darkened. They were at the club tonight conducting business, when I kissed you in front of them, in front of everyone. He shook his head. I marked you as mine, whether you want to be or not. My stomach dropped. That's insane. I'm not anyone's. I'm an accountant. I have a studio apartment and a student loan payment. I don't belong in whatever this is. I know. His voice softened almost imperceptibly, which is why you need to disappear for a few days, until I can. Negotiate your safety. Negotiate my. I pressed my hands against my temples, trying to process. This isn't happening. This is a dream. A nightmare. The car pulled to a stop. I looked out the window and my breath caught. We were in front of a building that didn't belong in my reality, all glass and steel and modern elegance, rising into the rainy sky like a monument to wealth. A doorman stood under an awning, his posture military straight. Where are we? My building. Dante opened his door, rain immediately soaking his expensive suit. You'll stay in my penthouse tonight. Tomorrow we'll figure out the rest. I'm not going anywhere with you. But even as I said it, I knew I didn't have a choice. Not really. Not with those men, the Volkovs out there, thinking I was something to Dante Caruso. He must have seen the defeat in my eyes because his expression shifted. Not quite sympathy, but something approaching it. I'll keep you safe, Alara, he said quietly. I give you my word. The word of a mafia boss? I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. The word of a man who doesn't make promises he can't keep. The driver opened my door, umbrella already raised. I sat there, water dripping down my face, my entire body shaking from cold and fear and the aftershocks of adrenaline. I could refuse, could demand they take me home, call the police, pretend this night had never happened. But something in Dante's eyes told me that wouldn't matter. The damage was done. I'd been seen. Marked. Pulled into a world I didn't understand by a single kiss that had felt like falling. One night, I said finally, tomorrow, you fix this. You make it so I can go back to my normal life. He nodded once, sharp and certain. Tomorrow. I didn't believe him, but I stepped out of the car anyway, into the rain and the darkness and whatever waited for me in Dante Caruso's world. As we walked toward the building, I caught my reflection in the glass doors, hair wild, makeup smudged, dress clinging to my body like a second skin. I looked like someone else, someone dangerous. Behind me, Dante's hand settled at the small of my back again, possessive and warm, and I realized with cold certainty that nothing about my life would ever be normal again. The elevator doors opened, revealing a private lift that required a keycard. Dante pressed the button for the penthouse. As we rose into the sky, leaving the city behind, I wondered if I was ascending toward safety or descending into something far more dangerous than the men we'd left behind. The penthouse was a cathedral of wealth and shadows. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the city sprawling below us like scattered diamonds, rain streaking down the glass in endless rivers. The space was all dark wood and leather, modern art on walls that probably cost more than I'd earn in a lifetime, and a silence so complete it felt oppressive. I stood dripping on marble floors, suddenly hyper-aware of how out of place I was. My cheap dress, my smudged makeup, my entire existence felt wrong here, like a stain on something pristine. "The guest room is this way." Dante's voice cut through my spiraling thoughts. He'd removed his suit jacket, his white shirt clinging to his shoulders where the rain had soaked through. Even disheveled, he looked like he belonged here. Like he'd been carved from the same expensive materials as everything else. I followed him down a hallway lined with closed doors, each one a mystery. What did a mafia boss keep behind locked doors? Weapons? Money? Bodies? Stop it, I told myself. You're being ridiculous. But was I? An hour ago I'd been dancing in a club. Now I was in a penthouse with a man who'd casually announced he ran the criminal underworld. Nothing about this was ridiculous, it was terrifying. Dante opened a door to reveal a bedroom that looked like it belonged in a luxury hotel. King-sized bed with white linens, another wall of windows, and a bathroom visible through. An open doorway where I could see marble and gold fixtures. "There are clothes in the closet," he said, not meeting my eyes. "They should fit. Shower, rest. I'll have food sent up." "Whose clothes?" The question came out sharper than I intended. Now he looked at me, one eyebrow raised. "Does it matter?" "Yes." Because suddenly it did. Suddenly I needed to know if he brought women here often. If this was a routine for him, kissing strangers, dragging them into danger, installing them in guest rooms with mystery wardrobes. "They're new," he said after a pause. "I have my assistant keep basics on hand for situations." "Situations like kidnapping accountants?" His jaw tightened. "Situations like protecting people who end up in danger because of me." The weight of that statement settled between us. Because that's what this was, wasn't it? I was in danger. Real, tangible danger from men with Russian accents and violent intentions, all because Dante Caruso had decided to kiss me in front of his enemies. "Why did you do it?" I asked quietly. "Why kiss me if you knew it would cause this?" For a long moment, he didn't answer. He stood in the doorway, backlit by the hallway light, his face half in shadow. When he finally spoke, his voice was rougher than before. "I don't know." The honesty of it surprised me. I'd expected arrogance, maybe some calculated explanation about power plays and strategy. But this raw admission felt more dangerous than any threat. "Get some rest, Alara." He started to turn away. "Wait." I didn't know why I stopped him, what I wanted to say. Maybe just that I didn't want to be alone in this beautiful, sterile room with my fear. "What happens tomorrow?" "Tomorrow I make calls. I negotiate. I remind certain people that you're under my protection and touching you would be a declaration of war." He said it so casually, like he was discussing a business meeting instead of potential violence. "And if they don't care about your reminders?" His eyes met mine, and I saw something in them that made my blood run cold. "Then I make sure they never touch anyone again." He left before I could respond, closing the door softly behind him. I stood there, dripping and shaking, until I heard his footsteps fade down the hallway. Then I locked the door, knowing it was probably pointless, that he could get in if he wanted, and stumbled toward the bathroom. The shower was scalding, almost painful, but I needed it. Needed to wash away the club, the kiss, the feeling of Dante's hand on my back like a brand. I scrubbed until my skin was pink and raw, until I could breathe again without my chest feeling tight. The clothes in the closet fit perfectly soft cotton pajamas in deep gray, still with tags attached. I tried not to think about how he'd known my size, how prepared he was for this exact scenario. I should have been exhausted, should have collapsed into that massive bed and slept until this nightmare made sense. But my mind was racing, replaying everything. The way he'd looked at me across the club, like I was prey. The way he'd kissed me, like I was salvation. The way he'd said, "I don't know," when I asked why. His careful control cracking just enough to let me see something raw underneath. I walked to the windows, pressing my palm against the cold glass. The city stretched out endlessly. Millions of lights, millions of people living normal lives. 20 floors below, there were people going to work, coming home, worrying about bills and breakups and ordinary problems. I wanted to be one of them so badly it physically hurt. A soft knock made me jump. "It's just food," Dante's voice called through the door. "I'm leaving it outside." I waited until I heard his footsteps retreat before opening the door. A tray sat on the floor, pasta and cream sauce. bread still warm, a bottle of wine that probably cost more than my rent. The thoughtfulness of it surprised me. I'd expected. I didn't know what, but not this careful. Consideration of comfort. I brought the tray inside and ate mechanically, tasting nothing. When I finally crawled into bed, the sheets were so soft they felt like clouds, but sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Dante's face, heard his voice saying, "I marked you as mine," felt his lips against mine, claiming something I hadn't agreed to give. Somewhere in the penthouse, he was awake too. I could feel it, that strange awareness that had sparked between us in the club. Like we were connected now, whether we wanted to be or not. My phone buzzed. I'd somehow kept it through everything. A text from Mara. "Where are you? Are you okay?" I stared at the screen, my fingers hovering over the keys. What could I possibly say? That I was in a Mafia boss's penthouse? That I'd stepped into a world where kisses started wars? I turned the phone off without responding. In the morning, Dante would make his calls. He'd fix this. I'd go back to my life. But as I lay there in the darkness, listening to the rain against the windows and the silence of the penthouse, I knew I was lying to myself. Nothing would ever be the same. I woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and a moment of complete disorientation. Where? Then it crashed back. The club. The kiss. Dante Caruso and his casual confession that he ran the criminal underworld. The penthouse that felt more like a gilded cage with every passing second. I sat up too quickly, my head spinning. The bedside clock read 9:47 a.m. I never slept past 7, never missed my morning routine of coffee and emails and the comfortable predictability of my life. My life that now felt impossibly far away. Voices drifted from somewhere in the penthouse low, male, speaking in rapid Italian. One of them was definitely Dante. I'd recognize that controlled cadence anywhere. The way he spoke like every word was a calculated move in some invisible chess game. I should have stayed in the room. Should have waited for him to come to me, to explain what happened next. Instead, I found myself pulling on the robe that had been laid out at the foot of the bed, black silk, that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe, and padding barefoot toward the voices. The hallway opened into a massive living area with those same floor-to-ceiling windows. In the daylight, the city looked different. Less romantic, more real. I could see the streets where normal people lived, their normal lives, completely unaware that men like Dante existed above them. He stood with his back to me, phone pressed to his ear, speaking Italian too quickly for me to catch more than a few words. He'd changed into fresh clothes, black slacks, a gray shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms corded with muscle and marked with a tattoo I couldn't quite make out. Another man sat on the leather couch, the scarred driver from last night. He noticed me first, his eyes flicking up and then away, a muscle in his jaw, tightening. Dante turned at his look, and when his eyes met mine, something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or something darker. He said something sharp in Italian and ended the call. "You should be resting," he said. "I should be at work." I crossed my arms, suddenly aware of how little the silk robe covered. I should be living my actual life, not hiding in a stranger's penthouse. "You're not hiding. You're being protected." He slid the phone into his pocket, his movements precise. "And I'm not a stranger anymore, am I?" The intimacy in those words made my stomach flip, because he was right. After last night, after that kiss, after fleeing through rain-soaked streets, after sleeping in his guest room, we'd crossed some invisible line into territory I didn't know how to navigate. "This is Marco." Dante gestured to the scarred man, who nodded once but didn't smile. "My head of security. He's been making arrangements for your safety." "What kind of arrangements?" Marco and Dante exchanged a look. Some unspoken communication passed between them, years of working together distilled into a glance. "The Volkovs made contact this morning," Dante said carefully. "They want a meeting." My heart stuttered. "About me?" "About respect, territory, the usual posturing." He said it so casually, like he was discussing a business merger, instead of whatever dark negotiations happened between criminal organizations. "You're leverage now. They think I care about you, which means they think they can use you." "Do you?" The question escaped before I could stop it. "Care about me?" Dante went very still. In the sunlight, his eyes weren't storm gray. They were lighter, almost silver, and completely unreadable. I don't let innocent people get hurt because of my decisions, he said finally. That's not the same thing. It shouldn't have stung. I didn't want him to care about me. I wanted to go home, to rewind to before I'd ever walked into that club. But it stung anyway. I need to call my work, I said, changing the subject. I need to tell them something. Already handled. Marco spoke for the first time, his voice surprisingly soft for someone who looked like he could break bones without effort. You're on emergency family leave. Your sister had a medical situation in Boston. 2 weeks approved. I stared at him. I don't have a sister. Your HR department thinks you do. Dante moved toward the kitchen, a sleek space of marble and steel, and started making coffee with the ease of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. We've also rerouted your mail, put a hold on your newspaper delivery, and arranged for your neighbor to water your plants. I don't have plants. You do now. 2 succulents, very low maintenance. The absurdity of it hit me like a wave. These men, criminals, killers, maybe had orchestrated my entire life in the span of a few hours, down to details I hadn't even considered. You can't just reorganize my existence. I said weakly. Dante poured coffee into 2 cups, black for him, then paused. How do you take yours? Cream, no sugar. He added cream from a container in the refrigerator, the gesture so domestic it felt surreal. Then he brought both cups to where I stood, pressing one into my hands. I'm reorganizing your existence to keep you alive, Alara. His voice was quiet but firm. If that offends your sensibilities, I apologize. But I won't apologize for doing what's necessary. The coffee was perfect. Of course it was. How long? I asked. How long do I have to hide here? A few days, maybe a week. He took a sip of his own coffee, his eyes never leaving mine. Until I can convince the Volkovs that touching you would cost them more than it's worth. And if you can't convince them? Something dangerous flashed across his face. Then I'll show them. Marco stood, the movement drawing both our attention. The meeting is set for tonight, neutral ground. I'll have the team ready. Dante nodded once, and Marco left without another word, the penthouse suddenly feeling smaller with just the 2 of us. You're going to meet with them? I asked. These men who want to hurt me? I'm going to remind them who runs this city. He set his coffee down on the counter, his jaw tight. And that some things aren't negotiable. Things like me? Things like people under my protection. There it was again, that careful distinction. I was a responsibility, not a desire, an obligation, not a choice. I should have been relieved. Should have been grateful he was keeping this professional, maintaining boundaries. Instead, I felt cold. I want to come with you, I heard myself say. Dante's head snapped up, his eyes sharp. Absolutely not. They want to see that I'm real, don't they? That I'm not just some story you made up? I set my coffee down too, forcing myself to meet his gaze. Let me come. Let me show them I'm not afraid. You should be afraid, he said quietly. These men are monsters, Alara. And what are you? The question hung between us, heavy and dangerous. Dante stepped closer, close enough that I could smell cedar and coffee and something darker. His hand came up, and for a moment I thought he might touch me. Instead, he brushed past, heading toward the hallway. Stay here, he ordered. That's not a request. Then he was gone, leaving me alone with my coffee and the sinking realization that I'd just tried to walk into a lion's den, and part of me, a reckless, terrifying part, wished he'd said yes. I spent the day pacing the penthouse like a caged animal. Dante had disappeared into what I assumed was his office, a room at the end of the hallway with double doors that remained firmly closed. Men came and went throughout the afternoon, their voices low and urgent, their footsteps heavy on the marble floors. No one acknowledged me. I was a ghost in this world, invisible except when I was a problem to be solved. I tried to distract myself. Turned on the massive television but couldn't focus on anything. Attempted to read a book from the shelf, all leather-bound first editions that looked like they'd never been opened. Even stood at the windows for an hour, watching the city move below me, everyone going about their lives while mine hung in suspension. By the time the sun started to set, painting the sky in shades of blood orange and violet, I was ready to crawl out of my skin. The office doors finally opened. Dante emerged, looking exhausted in a way that made him seem almost human. His shirt was rumpled, his hair disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. He stopped when he saw me standing by the windows. "You should eat something," he said. "I'm not hungry." "Ilara, don't." I turned to face him fully. "Don't treat me like a child who needs to be managed. I'm losing my mind in here." Something shifted in his expression, a crack in that carefully maintained control. He moved toward the bar, poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey, and downed it in one swallow. "The meeting is in 2 hours," he said finally. "Marco will stay with you. There are 6 men positioned around the building. You'll be safe." "That's not what I'm worried about." He poured another drink but didn't consume it, just stared at the amber liquid like it held answers. "What are you worried about?" "You." The word escaped before I could stop it. "I'm worried about you walking into a room with men who want to hurt you." Dante's head came up sharply, his eyes finding mine across the space. For a moment, neither of us moved. Neither of us breathed. "Why would you worry about me?" His voice was rough, genuinely confused. "Because I didn't know how to finish that sentence. Because you kissed me? Because you've upended my entire life? Because despite everything, I can't stop thinking about the way you looked at me in that club like I was the only person in the world? I shouldn't matter to you," he said, as if reading my thoughts. "This world, these people were not worth your concern. Maybe I get to decide what's worth my concern." He set the glass down carefully, his movements controlled again. But when he looked at me, I saw something raw beneath the surface, something that looked almost like longing. "Do you know what I did today?" he asked quietly. "I called in favors from people who terrify most men. I threatened rivals who would start a war over lesser insults. I arranged for enough firepower to level a city block." He paused. "All because I made a mistake last night. The kiss." "The kiss," he agreed. "I should have walked away from you. Should have let you dance with your friend and go home to your safe life. But I didn't." "Why?" I asked again, needing to understand. Dante crossed the space between us, closing the distance until we were separated by nothing but air and possibility. This close, I could see the flecks of blue in his gray eyes, the faint scar along his jawline, the way his pulse beat in his throat. "Because when you looked at me," he said softly, "you didn't see a monster. You didn't see power or danger or money. You just saw a man." My breath caught. "I see all of it now. I know." His hand came up slowly, giving me time to move away. When I didn't, his fingers brushed my cheek, so gentle it made my chest ache. "That's why I need you to stay here tonight. Because if something happened to you if they touched you because of me..." He didn't finish. Didn't need to. I could see it in his eyes, the weight of responsibility he carried, the iron control it took to maintain his empire while keeping whatever humanity he had left intact. "Come back safe," I whispered. His thumb traced my cheekbone, and I leaned into the touch before I could stop myself. This was insane. He was a criminal. I should be running, screaming, doing anything but standing here letting him touch me like I was something precious. But I didn't move. "Ilara." My name on his lips was a prayer and a curse. "You need to forget about me. When this is over, when you're safe." What if I don't want to forget? The confession hung between us, dangerous and honest. Dante's eyes darkened, his hand sliding into my hair, and for one breathless moment, I thought he might kiss me again. Instead, he pressed his forehead to mine, his breath mingling with my own. "You deserve better than this life," he said roughly. "Better than me." Shouldn't I get to decide that? A knock at the door shattered the moment. Marco's voice came through, apologetic but firm. "Boss, it's time." Dante pulled back, and I felt the loss of his warmth like a physical thing. He straightened his shirt, his mask sliding back into place, the controlled, dangerous man the world expected him to be. "Stay inside," he ordered, but his voice was softer now. "Don't answer the door for anyone but Marco. If something goes wrong, nothing will go wrong. If something goes wrong," he continued firmly, "there's a panic room behind the bookshelf in my office. 3rd shelf from the left, the red book. Pull it and the door will open. Wait inside until Marco comes for you. He was giving me escape routes, planning for his own death. Dante, promise me." He gripped my shoulders, his eyes intense. "Promise you'll hide if things go bad." "I promise," I whispered, even though we both knew I might be lying. He held my gaze a moment longer, then turned and walked away. At the door, he paused, looking back over his shoulder. "For what it's worth," he said quietly, "meeting you wasn't a mistake. It was the first real thing that's happened to me in years. Then he was gone, leaving me alone with the sunset and the terrible certainty that I was falling for a man who lived in shadows. I watched from the windows as his car pulled away into the night, taillights disappearing into the city, and I prayed to gods I didn't believe in that he would come back to me. The first hour passed like years. I sat on the couch, my phone clutched in my hands, refreshing news sites every 30 seconds, even though I had no idea what I was looking for. Gang violence? Shootings? How did these things even get reported? Marco stood by the windows, silent as a statue, his hand never far from whatever weapon he kept concealed beneath his jacket. He hadn't spoken since Dante left, hadn't even acknowledged my presence except to bring me water I didn't drink. The second hour was worse. Every sound made me jump, the elevator dinging, footsteps in the hallway, the wind against the windows. My imagination conjured 1,000 disasters. Dante bleeding out in some warehouse, rival families storming the penthouse. A world without the man who'd upended my life in the span of a single kiss. "He's done this 100 times, Marco said suddenly, making me flinch. His voice was gruff but not unkind. "These meetings, he always comes back. You don't know that. I've been with him for 12 years. I know." I wanted to ask more how they'd met, what Dante was like before I knew him, if he'd ever brought other women to this penthouse, but the words stuck in my throat. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Stop looking at the news. You're giving yourself anxiety. D, despite everything." I almost smiled. He was in a meeting with dangerous men and still somehow monitoring me from across the city. I typed back, "How did you know?" "I always know. Stay calm. I'll be home soon." Home. As if this penthouse was somehow mine too now. I set the phone down and forced myself to breathe. He was fine. He was coming back. Everything would be. The elevator dinged. Marco's posture changed instantly, his hand moving to his weapon. "Stay behind me." My heart hammered as the doors opened, but it was Dante who stepped out, alone, his jacket missing and his shirt torn at the shoulder. Blood stained his collar, not a lot, but enough to make my stomach drop. "It's done," he said to Marco, his voice flat. They agreed to terms. Marco nodded and disappeared down the hallway, giving us privacy I wasn't sure I wanted. I stood frozen as Dante moved toward the bar, poured himself a drink with hands that shook almost imperceptibly. He downed it, poured another, and finally met my eyes. "You're bleeding," I said. "It's nothing." "Dante," I said, "it's nothing." The sharpness in his voice made me flinch. He saw it, and something in his expression cracked. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't." He set the glass down too hard, the crystal ringing against marble. The bathroom. First aid kit under the sink. I should have let him handle it himself. Should have maintained distance, remembered that he was a criminal who'd dragged me into danger. Instead, I found myself walking toward him. "Sit down, Alara. Sit down." Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, maybe respect, and he sank onto the couch. I retrieved the first aid kit, my hands steadier than I expected, and knelt beside him. "Shirt off," I said. His eyes met mine, a challenge and a question. Then slowly, he unbuttoned his shirt and shrugged it off. I'd known he was built you couldn't move the way he did without serious muscle, but seeing it was different. His torso was a map of violence and survival. Scars, old and new, crisscrossed his ribs. The tattoo I'd glimpsed earlier wound up his left arm, a serpent and a rose, beautiful and deadly, and high on his shoulder, a fresh gash that was still bleeding. "What happened?" I asked, cleaning the wound as gently as I could. "Glass. Someone got aggressive. Marco handled it." "Handled it how?" "You don't want to know." His jaw was tight, his eyes fixed on the windows. "They agreed to leave you alone. That's all that matters. What did you have to give them?" "Territory. Money. Blood." He said it so casually, like he was discussing stock trades. "A favor to be collected later." My hands stilled. "What kind of favor?" "The dangerous kind." Now he looked at me, and the exhaustion in his eyes was soul deep. "But you're safe. They won't touch you." I should have been relieved, should have thanked him and gone back to the guest room to pack my things and plan my escape back to normal life. Instead, I felt sick. "You bought my safety," I said quietly, "with violence and favors to people who will use them against you." "Yes. All because you kissed me." "Yes." His hand came up, catching my wrist gently. And I'd do it again. The confession hit me like a physical blow. I pulled away, standing abruptly, the first aid supplies scattered around us. "This is insane," I said. "We don't even know each other. You've turned my life upside down for a kiss? For some moment that shouldn't have mattered. But it did matter." He stood too, closing the distance between us. "It matters because I felt something when I looked at you. Something I haven't felt in 10 years of existing in this world. And yes, I pulled you into danger. Yes, I've complicated your life. But don't tell me that kiss didn't matter. It shouldn't have happened. But it did." His voice rose, control finally shattering. "It happened, Alara, and now I can't stop thinking about you. Can't stop wanting." He stopped himself, breathing hard. "Wanting what?" I demanded. He stared at me, something wild and desperate in his eyes. Then he moved, fast as a strike, his hands cupping my face as he kissed me. Not gentle like before. This was hunger and frustration and need. His mouth claimed mine like he was drowning and I was air, like the last 2 days of restraint had finally broken him. I should have pushed him away. Should have remembered all the reasons this was wrong. Instead, I kissed him back just as desperately. My hands found his bare shoulders, his skin hot beneath my palms. He made a sound low in his throat, one arm banding around my waist and pulling me flush against him. When we finally broke apart, both breathing, hard, his forehead pressed to mine. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry for dragging you into this." "Then let me go," I said, even though the words felt like lies. "Fix this and let me go home." His arms tightened around me. "What if I can't?" Before I could answer, before I could process what he meant, his phone rang. He pulled it out, and I watched his face transform from vulnerable to stone cold in seconds. "What?" He barked into the phone. Whatever he heard made the blood drain from his face. "When?" A pause. "Where is she now?" My stomach dropped. "What's wrong?" He lowered the phone, his eyes meeting mine with something that looked like devastation. "The Volkovs lied," he said quietly. "They took someone. As insurance." "Who?" "Your friend, Mara." The world tilted. "They have instructions," Dante continued, his voice hollow. "If we want her alive, you have to surrender yourself by midnight." "No." Dante's voice cut through my panic like a blade. He was already moving, phone pressed to his ear, barking orders in Italian. Marco appeared from nowhere, armed men materializing from rooms I didn't even know existed. "We're not negotiating with them," Dante continued, his eyes hard as diamonds. "We're getting her back. They want me." My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. "If I go to them, they'll let Mara go. You heard them. They're lying." He grabbed my shoulders, forcing me to look at him. "Alara, listen to me. The moment you walk into their hands, you're both dead. This isn't about exchange, it's about leverage and humiliation. They want to hurt me by hurting you. She's there because of me." My voice broke. "Because I asked you to dance. Because you kissed me. Mara has nothing to do with your world, and now she's—" I couldn't finish. Couldn't imagine what they were doing to her. "Which is exactly why I'm going to get her back." His grip gentlened, his thumbs stroking my arms. "But I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" Trust. Such a simple word for such an impossible thing. Trust a man I'd known for 2 days. Trust a criminal who'd pulled me into a nightmare. Trust someone whose kiss still burned on my lips. "How?" I whispered. "Marco." Dante released me and turned to his head of security. "Assemble the team. Full tactical. I want eyes on their location in 20 minutes. Boss, if we go in aggressive, I don't care." Dante's voice was ice. "They broke protocol. They took a civilian. That means the rules are off." Marco nodded once and disappeared, already making calls. I stood there, shaking, my mind a whirlwind of guilt and terror. Mara's face flashed through my memory, her laugh, her terrible relationship advice, the way she'd begged me to help her make her ex jealous. This was my fault. All of it. "I need to see the message," I said. "Whatever they sent, I need to see it." Dante hesitated, then handed me his phone. The image made bile rise in my throat. Mara, tied to a chair in what looked like a warehouse, her makeup smeared, terror evident in her eyes. The message below was simple. "The accountant for your friend. Midnight. Come alone or we send her back in pieces. I'm going. I said, my voice steady despite the fear threatening to consume me. Absolutely not. Dante, she's my best friend. My only real friend. I can't. My voice cracked. I can't let her die because of me. He took the phone back, his jaw working. For a long moment, he just looked at me, and I saw the war happening behind his eyes. The man who protected what was his versus the man who understood sacrifice. There's another way, he said finally. But you're not going to like it. Tell me. He moved to the windows, staring out at the city that bowed to his will. We give them what they want, or make them think we are. I don't understand. You go to them. He said it without turning around. But not alone, not unprotected. We wire you, track you, and the moment you're inside, my team moves, fast, and overwhelming. You want to use me as bait. I want to use their arrogance against them. Now he looked at me, and the intensity in his gaze made my breath catch. They think they're smarter than me. Think they can take what's mine and walk away. We let them believe it right until the moment we cut them down. The coldness in his voice should have terrified me. Instead, I felt something else. Certainty. Purpose. What do I have to do? I asked. Something flickered across his face. Respect. Maybe. Or fear. Are you sure? Alara, if this goes wrong, then you'll fix it. I crossed to him, tilting my chin up to meet his eyes. Won't you? His hand came up, cupping my cheek, with my last breath. The promise hung between us, heavy and absolute. Then tell me the plan. The next hour was a blur of preparation. Marco fitted me with a wire so small I could barely feel it, tucked beneath my clothes. Dante briefed me on what to say, how to act, where to position myself to give his team the best chance. Keep them talking, he instructed, his voice clipped and professional even though his eyes betrayed his worry. The longer you stall, the more time we have to get into position. When you hear the first gunshot, drop to the ground and stay there. Don't be brave. Don't try to help. Just survive. What about Mara? My men will get to her first. I promise. I wanted to believe him. Needed to believe him. They dressed me in dark clothes, jeans, a black shirt, boots that would let me run if necessary. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. 2 days ago, I'd been an accountant with color-coded spreadsheets. Now I was bait in a Mafia power play. It's time, Marco said from the doorway. My stomach dropped. This was real. This was happening. Dante caught my arm as I started to leave, pulling me back against his chest. His arms wrapped around me from behind, his lips at my ear. You come back to me, he said, his voice rough. Do. You understand? Whatever happens in there, you survive this. And if I don't? His arms tightened. Then I'll burn their entire world to ash. I turned in his embrace, looking up at him. The controlled mask had cracked, revealing something raw and desperate underneath. Dante. He kissed me, hard and claiming and full of everything we couldn't say. When he pulled back, his eyes were blazing. Go, he said, before I change my mind and lock you in that panic room forever. I forced myself to walk away, following Marco to the elevator. As the doors closed, I caught one last glimpse of Dante standing alone in his penthouse, his hands clenched into fists, looking more vulnerable than any man with that much power had a right to be. The elevator descended, carrying me toward whatever waited in the dark, and I prayed that his promise, his team, his plan, his protection would be enough to save us all. The car ride to the warehouse felt both endless and too short. Marco drove in silence, his jaw tight, checking his mirrors constantly. He cares about you, Marco said suddenly. In 12 years, I've never seen him like this. Like what? Afraid. The word settled in my chest like a stone. We pulled up to an abandoned building on the waterfront. Through the windows, I could see shadows moving inside. Armed men, waiting. They're monitoring police frequencies, Marco said. One wrong move and they'll know. You have to sell this, Alara. Make them believe you came alone. I nodded, my throat too tight for words. The boss will get you out. His hand gripped mine briefly. I've never seen him fail. Then he was gone, melting into the shadows, and I was alone. I walked toward the warehouse, each step harder than the last. The door opened before I reached it, and I stepped into the lion's den. The warehouse smelled like rust and fear. 4 men stood in a loose semicircle around Mara, who was still bound to the chair. Her head snapped up when she saw me, her eyes wide with terror and confusion. "Alara?" Her voice was hoarse. "What are you? You shouldn't be here." "Shut up," one of the men said in heavily accented English. He was tall, blonde, with a scar running through his eyebrow. The leader, I assumed. My hands were shaking, but I forced myself to stand straight, to meet his eyes. "I'm here. Let her go." He laughed a cold, empty sound. "You think it works like that? You walk in, we let her walk out. Everyone goes home happy? That was the deal." "The deal," he said slowly, stalking toward me, "was to bring Dante Caruso to his knees. And look at you, his little weakness, delivered right to our door." Behind him, I could see Mara mouthing something. "Run." But I couldn't. Wouldn't. Not without her. "I came alone," I said, proud that my voice didn't shake. "Like you asked. Now honor your word." "Honor." He circled me like a predator. "You hear that, boys? She wants us to be honorable, like her precious Dante, who built his empire on blood and broken promises." "He'll come for me," I said. It wasn't a threat, just truth. "We're counting on it." The leader stopped in front of me, close enough that I could smell vodka on his breath. "See, killing you quickly would be merciful. Boring. But making him watch while we destroy everything he cares about? That's poetry." My heart was hammering so hard I was sure he could hear it. Where was Dante? How long was I supposed to stall? "You're afraid of him," I said, and saw anger flash in his eyes. "Good. Angry people made mistakes. That's why you went after civilians, after women. Because you can't face him directly." His hand shot out, gripping my throat. Not tight enough to choke, but enough to remind me how easily he could. "Careful, little accountant," he hissed. "Your boyfriend isn't here to protect you." "Let her go," Mara sobbed. "Please, she has nothing to do with this." The leader released me, shoving me backward. I stumbled, but kept my feet, my eyes darting around the warehouse. 3 exits I could see. At least 6 more men in the shadows. This was a trap within a trap. "Alexei." Another man approached, older, with cold eyes. "The perimeter is secure. No sign of Caruso's people." Alexei. So that was the leader's name. "Of course there's no sign," Alexei said. He sent his pretty distraction instead, probably hoping we'd be satisfied with her and forget about the territories he owes us. "I don't know anything about territories," I said truthfully. "I'm just a woman who caught a king's eye." Alexei smiled, and it was worse than his anger. "Tell me, what's so special about you? What does Dante see that makes you worth starting a war over?" I thought of Dante's hands on my face, his forehead pressed to mine, the way he'd looked at me like I was something precious in a world of violence. "I don't know," I whispered. "Well," Alexei pulled out a knife, the blade catching the dim light. "Maybe we should find out," Mara screamed, and then the windows exploded. Glass rained down as dark figures swung through on ropes, hitting the ground in perfect formation. Gunfire erupted, deafening, chaotic, the muzzle flashes turning everything into a strobe light nightmare. "Down." Someone roared Marco's voice, and I dropped, covering my head as bullets tore through the air above me. Bodies hit the floor. Men shouted in Russian and Italian. Through the chaos, I saw Mara's chair tip over, and I crawled toward her, my ears ringing, my whole body shaking. "Alara." She was crying, struggling against her bonds. "What's happening?" "It's okay," I lied, working at the ropes with trembling fingers. "We're getting out of here." A hand grabbed my hair, yanking me backward. I screamed as Alexei hauled me to my feet, his knife at my throat. "Caruso," he bellowed. "Show yourself or I paint the walls with her blood." The gunfire stopped. The sudden silence was somehow worse. Then I heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate, echoing through the warehouse. Dante emerged from the shadows like a nightmare-given form. His face was splattered with blood that wasn't his own. His eyes were cold, empty, the eyes of a man who'd killed before and would kill again without hesitation. This was the real Dante Caruso, the monster the city feared. "Let her go, Alexei." His voice was quiet, controlled, more terrifying than any shout. "This is between us." "Between us?" Alexei's laugh was manic. "You made it between us when you kissed her in front of my men, when you chose her over peace." "I chose her over a lot of things." Dante's eyes found mine, and for just a moment, The coldness cracked. Now let her go, and maybe I'll make your death quick. The knife pressed harder against my throat. I felt a sting, warmth trickling down my neck. Dante's expression didn't change, but something in his stillness shifted, became predatory. Bad choice, he said softly. Everything happened at once. Dante moved faster than should have been possible, drawing a gun I hadn't seen. The shot was deafening, precise. Alexi's grip loosened as he stumbled backward, a red bloom spreading across his shoulder. The knife clattered to the floor. I ran, didn't think, just sprinted toward Dante, toward safety. His arms caught me, pulling me behind him as more gunfire erupted. Marco and his team systematically took down the remaining Volkovs, professional and ruthless. Mara, I gasped. She's still. I've got her. Marco was already there, cutting her bonds, lifting her to her feet. Dante's hand cupped the back of my head, checking the cut on my throat. His jaw was tight, his eyes blazing with barely controlled rage. You're bleeding, he said, his voice rough. It's just a scratch. He touched you. Each word was a death sentence. He put a knife to your throat. Dante. He turned, and I saw murder in his eyes. Alexei was on the ground, clutching his shoulder, surrounded by Dante's men. Boss, Marco said quietly. What do you want us to do with him? Dante holstered his gun, his movements precise. Take him to the usual place. I'll deal with him personally. Then he turned back to me, his hands framing my face, his thumbs gentle despite the violence still crackling around us. We're leaving, he said. Now, before the police arrive. I nodded, numb with shock and adrenaline. Mara was sobbing against Marco's shoulder. Blood stained the concrete. The warehouse was a war zone, and Dante, my Dante, who'd kissed me like salvation, had orchestrated all of it. As he led me out into the night, his arm protective around my waist, I realized with crystalline clarity that there was no going back. I'd seen his world, his violence, his power, and God help me, I still wanted him. The penthouse felt different when we returned, less like a cage and more like a sanctuary. Or maybe I was different, forever changed by the smell of gunpowder and the feeling of a knife against my throat. Mara had been taken to a safe house with round-the-clock protection. She'd hugged me so tight I couldn't breathe, whispering apologies I didn't deserve. Marco promised she'd be home within a week, once the dust settled and the remaining Volkovs understood the consequences of tonight. Now it was just Dante and me, standing in his living room at 3 a.m, the city lights painting everything in shades of gold and shadow. He hadn't spoken since we left the warehouse, hadn't looked at me, just stood at the windows with his hands clenched at his sides, blood still staining his shirt. Dante, I said softly, you should shower, get some rest. His voice was hollow, distant. I'll have Marco arrange transport home tomorrow. Back to your life. My life. The words felt foreign, like a language I'd forgotten how to speak. Is that what you want? I asked. For me to leave? It's what you should want. He finally turned, and the devastation in his eyes stole my breath. You saw what I am tonight, Alara. What I'm capable of. You felt a knife at your throat because of me. You saved me. I put you in danger. His control shattered, voice rising. I pulled you into my world, marked you as mine, and nearly got you killed. What kind of man does that? The kind who kept his promise. I moved toward him, my legs steadier than they had any right to be. You said you'd get Mara back. You did. You said you'd protect me. You did. By putting a bullet in a man's shoulder instead of his head. His laugh was bitter. Do you know why I didn't kill him, Alara? Because I wanted to. God, I wanted to put that gun to his temple and pull the trigger for touching you. But I didn't, because you were watching. Because I couldn't let you see that part of me. I've already seen it. I stopped in front of him, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body. I saw you walk into that warehouse like death itself. I saw the blood on your hands. And I'm still here. You're in shock. Tomorrow, when reality sets in. Tomorrow I'll still be here. My hand found his chest, feeling his heart racing beneath my palm. Stop trying to push me away. I'm trying to save you from making a mistake you'll regret. Maybe I want to make this mistake. The words escaped before I could stop them. Raw and honest. Maybe I'm tired of playing it safe. Tired of color-coded calendars and spreadsheets, and a life so carefully controlled, nothing real ever touches it. His hand covered mine, pressing it harder against his heart. "You're not thinking clearly." "I'm thinking clearly for the first time in years." I looked up at him, this beautiful, dangerous man who'd upended everything. "When that knife was at my throat, do you know what I thought about? Not my apartment or my job or my carefully planned future. I thought about you, about how I'd never get to understand what this is between us." "Alara, kiss me," I whispered. "Please, kiss me like you did at the club. Like I'm not something you have to protect, but someone you actually want." For a long moment, he just stared at me, his breathing ragged, his control hanging by a thread. Then it snapped. His mouth crashed against mine, hungry and desperate, and nothing like the calculated kiss at the club. This was need, pure and unfiltered. His hands tangled in my hair as he backed me against the windows, the cold glass against my shoulders, a sharp contrast to the heat of his body. I gasped and he deepened the kiss, his tongue sliding against mine, stealing every thought except more and yes, and finally, "Tell me to stop." He breathed against my lips. "Tell me this is wrong." "It probably is." My hands found the buttons of his ruined shirt, fumbling them open. "I don't care." He groaned, the sound vibrating through both of us. His lips traced down my jaw, my throat, pausing at the small cut Alexi's knife had left. "He marked you," Dante said roughly, his voice thick with barely controlled rage and desire. "Put his blade on your skin. You'll make me forget." I tilted my head back, giving him access. "Won't you?" His answer was to lift me, my legs wrapping around his waist as he carried me down the hallway, not to the guest room, to his room darker, more intimate, smelling like cedar and smoke and him. He laid me on his bed like I was something precious, something worth savoring. The moonlight through the windows cast silver across his face as he braced himself above me. "Last chance," he said, his voice strained. "Walk away, Alara, before this becomes something neither of us can take back." I reached up, tracing the scar along his jaw, the hard line of his mouth. "I don't want to take it back." Something in his expression broke relief and surrender and a tenderness that made my chest ache. "Then you're mine," he said softly. "From this moment forward, you're mine to protect, mine to keep safe, mine to love," I finished, the word a question and a hope. His forehead pressed to mine, his breath ragged. "I don't know if I remember how, if someone like me is even capable of it anymore. Then we'll figure it out together." He kissed me again, slower this time. Thorough, like he was memorizing every inch of my mouth, every sound I made. His hands traced down my sides, reverent and possessive all at once. Clothes disappeared between kisses and whispered confessions. His scars beneath my fingertips told stories of violence survived. My soft curves against his hard edges felt like pieces of different puzzles that somehow fit perfectly. "Beautiful," he murmured against my skin. "So damn beautiful it hurts to look at you." "Dante, say my name like that again." His mouth found the hollow of my throat. "Let me hear how you sound when you're not afraid of me." "I'm not afraid." My fingers threaded through his hair. "I'm terrified. But not of you." "Of what?" "Of how much I want this. Want you." The confession escaped on a gasp as his lips traced lower. "Of how right it feels when everything about it should be wrong." He raised his head, his eyes meeting mine. In the darkness, they looked almost silver, burning with an intensity that made me feel exposed and cherished all at once. "Nothing that feels like this could be wrong," he said roughly. "Not when I've spent 10 years feeling nothing at all." Then there were no more words, just sensation, his mouth, his hands, the weight of him pressing me into expensive sheets, the slide of skin against skin, the building heat that felt like falling and flying all at once. He took his time, learning every sound I made, every place that made me gasp his name. When we finally came together, it felt like an inevitability, like two forces of nature colliding. I held on to him like an anchor, as the world shattered and reformed around us. His name on my lips was a prayer. Mine on his was a vow. Afterward, wrapped in his arms with moonlight painting patterns across tangled sheets, reality crept back in. "What happens now?" I whispered against his chest. His arms tightened around me. "Now I spend every day proving you didn't make a mistake. And if your world comes for us again, then I'll burn it all down to keep you safe." He pressed a kiss to my hair. "Every empire, every rival, everything but you." The promise should have terrified me. Instead, I felt safe. I'd surrendered to the darkness and found light in the most unexpected place. I woke to sunlight and the feeling of being watched. Dante sat at the edge of the bed, already dressed in fresh clothes, his hair still damp from a shower. He held a cup of coffee and looked at me like I was a dream he was afraid would disappear. "Morning," I said, my voice rough with sleep. "It's afternoon." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "You needed the rest." I sat up, pulling the sheet around myself, suddenly shy despite everything we'd shared in the darkness. In the daylight, reality felt sharper, more complicated. "What are you thinking?" he asked, setting the coffee on the nightstand. That I should probably panic. I tucked my hair behind my ear, that I should be running for the door, calling the police, doing anything except sitting in a Mafia boss's bed feeling content. "Are you? Content?" I met his eyes, those storm cloud eyes that had seen too much violence and somehow still held tenderness when they looked at me. "Terrifyingly so," I admitted. He reached out, his fingers brushing my cheek. "I've been thinking too, about what comes next, about how to keep you safe and give you the life you deserve." My stomach tightened. This sounds like a goodbye speech. No. The word was immediate, fierce. Never. But it is a choice, Ilara, one you need to make with clear eyes and a clear head. I waited, my heart hammering. "You can walk away," he said quietly. "I'll make sure the Volkovs never touch you or anyone you care about. I'll set you up somewhere new if you want new city, new identity, enough money to start over. You could go back to your spreadsheets and color-coded life. Be safe. Be normal. Or," I whispered, "or you stay." His hand moved to cut my face, his thumb tracing my cheekbone. "You stay, and I give you everything I have. My protection, my loyalty, my world dark as it is. But I won't lie to you about what that means. There will be danger. There will be nights I come home with blood on my hands. There will be moments when you question everything. And what do I give you in return?" I asked. Something vulnerable flickered across his face. "Your light, your goodness, a reason to remember I'm human and not just the monster my enemies see." The weight of the choice settled over me. Logic screamed to run to take the escape he was offering and never look back. But my heart, that traitorous, reckless organ, was already made up. "I need to know something first," I said. "Last night when you said you didn't know if you could love, did you mean it?" Dante was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood, moving to the windows, his back to me. "I loved someone once," he said, his voice distant. "My sister, Sophia. She was the only good thing in my life growing up, and I spent every day trying to protect her from our father's world. But when I was 22, a rival family took her, killed her, to punish me for being too ambitious." My chest clenched. "Dante, I built this empire on her memory," he continued. "Made myself into something so terrifying no one would dare touch what's mine again. But somewhere along the way, I forgot how to feel anything except anger. Until you looked at me across that club like I was just a man." He turned back to me, and I saw wetness in his eyes. He was too proud to let fall. "So yes, I meant it. I don't know if I remember how to love. But God, Ilara, I want to learn. With you." I threw back the sheets and went to him, not caring that I was naked and vulnerable. I wrapped my arms around him, pressing my face against his chest. "Then teach me about your world," I said. "And I'll teach you about mine. We'll figure out the rest together." His arms came around me, crushing me against him. "You're sure? Because once you choose this, once you choose me, there's no going back. You'll be part of this life forever." "I'm sure." And I was, terrified but certain, reckless but clear-eyed. "I choose you, Dante Caruso, darkness and all." He pulled back just enough to kiss me deep and claiming and full of promise. "Then you're mine," he murmured against my lips, "and I'm yours, for however long we have." 3 months later, I stood in Dante's office, our office now reviewing the books for his legitimate businesses. Because apparently, the criminal underworld still required accounting, and I was surprisingly good at finding discrepancies. "You're frowning," Dante said from his desk, where he was reviewing contracts. We worked in comfortable silence most afternoons, my presence somehow grounding him. "Your restaurant manager is skimming." I tapped the spreadsheet. "Not much, but enough to notice. Handle it however you see fit." I looked up, surprised. You're giving me authority to fire your people? You're my partner. He said it simply, like it was obvious. What's mine is yours, including the headaches. Partner. The word still sent warmth through my chest. My life had changed in ways I couldn't have imagined. I'd quit my corporate job and moved into the penthouse permanently. Mara visited weekly, still traumatized but healing, and had somehow become friends with Marco. My apartment was rented out, my old life packed away. I attended charity galas on Dante's arm and learned to navigate the complicated politics of his world. I met his associates, dangerous men, who treated me with careful respect because Dante's devotion was absolute and terrifying. But I also brought softness to his life. Sunday morning breakfasts, movie nights on the couch, the sound of laughter in rooms that had only known strategy and violence. He'd learned to smile again, to sleep through the night with me in his arms, to trust that I wouldn't leave even when his world got bloody. And I'd learned that darkness wasn't always evil. That violence could protect as well as destroy. That love didn't have to be simple to be real. What are you thinking? Dante asked, watching me with that intense focus he reserved only for me. That 3 months ago, I was terrified of you. And now, I crossed to him, settling into his lap, my arms looping around his neck. Now I'm just terrified of losing you. His hand settled at my waist, possessive and gentle. Never going to happen. I told you you're mine. Forever. Forever is a long time for a man in your profession. Then I'll just have to be careful. He kissed me softly. I have too much to live for now. Through the windows, the city spread out before us. His kingdom, his responsibility, his burden. But when he looked at me, I saw something else in his eyes. Hope. I love you, I said. The first time I'd said it out loud, though we'd both known for weeks. His breath caught, his grip tightening. Say it again. I love you, Dante Caruso. Your darkness and your light. All of it. He stood, lifting me with him, my legs wrapping around his waist. I love you too, he said roughly, the words sounding new and ancient all at once. My salvation, my reason, my everything. He carried me toward the bedroom, and I actually laughed at the predictability of it. But as he laid me down on our bed, as his hands and mouth mapped territory they'd claimed 100 times before, I felt nothing but gratitude. For a reckless decision in a nightclub, for a kiss that changed everything, for a man who'd learned to love again because I'd been brave enough to let him. The world outside might have seen a monster and his captive, but we knew the truth. Sometimes salvation comes wrapped in darkness. Sometimes love means surrendering to the fall. And sometimes, the most dangerous choice is also the most right. As Dante whispered promises against my skin and I held on to him like an anchor, I knew with absolute certainty I'd make the same choice 1,000 times over. This was my life now. Dark, dangerous, and devastatingly beautiful. And I wouldn't change a single moment.